everyone. My name is Stephanie Pettis. I'm the Vice President of Planning and Strategy from 25th Hour Communications. I want to welcome everyone from the East and the West Coast today. We have a lot of participants and we are so glad to have all of you on board. And most of all, we're honored to have Dr. Pamela Lester and Dr. Keith Curry with us, the warriors leading the charge for equity, diversity, and inclusion. And today's webinar is going to be a little bit different format. We're going to do a type of Q&A. And I'm excited for Dr. Lester and Dr. Curry to share with you a little bit about themselves and their colleges, but I did want to touch base on a few little housekeeping items. So if you could go and check in on social with us at 25th Hour, our social media, or with Dr. Lester and Dr. Curry, who are both very active on Twitter, as you all know, who follow the equity chat during the week. Also, if you have questions today, feel free to share those with us on Twitter with #EquityConversation, and we'll be happy to get to those at the end of the presentation. We will have time for Q&A at the end, so if anyone has any questions during the webinar, feel free to go ahead and type that in the Q&A box, and we will get to those as soon as we can after we wrap up the presentation. So really quickly, I want to touch base and introduce Dr. Keith Curry and Dr. Pamela Lester, and then I will let them take over and share a little bit about themselves and their colleges and the work that they're doing. So Dr. Keith Curry is the president of Compton College and CEO of Compton Community College District. In 2018, Dr. Curry received the Harry Bittermer Distinguished Administrator Award at the 2019 Community College League of California Annual Conference. Dr. Curry was honored as one of 3 2019 Champions of Equity by the Campaign for College Opportunity and the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials Educational Fund. In June 2020, Dr. Curry was invited to serve on the California Higher Education Recovery with Equity Task Force. And Dr. Curry earned his doctorate in educational leadership from the University of California, Irvine, and a bachelor's degree in American Studies from the University of California, Santa Cruz. Dr. Pamela Lester is in her 10th year as the president of San Diego Mesa College. And I have to just do a really quick sidebar just to say that their backgrounds are both phenomenal. I'm a little jealous. So they're beautiful campuses, both of them. Dr. Lester earned her Bachelor of Arts her Bachelor of Arts and Master of Arts in Speech Pathology and Audiology from San Jose State University, and her doctorate in Education and Educational Leadership and Change from Fielding Graduate University. Dr. Lester's service includes membership on several local, state, and national boards, many in San Diego and throughout the state, and also the American Association of Community Colleges Commission for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. She currently serves as the president of the Chief Executive Officer of the California Community Colleges Board and is co-chairing the Task Force on Affordability for CEOCCC. The Equity Avengers, together today with us, Dr. Lester and Dr. Curry, are focused on closing the outcome gaps of minority students, and they host a weekly #Equity Chat on Twitter, interviewing equity-minded practitioners. So I will now, without further ado, toss it over to Dr. Lester and Dr. Curry for our presentation. And you all just let me know when you are ready for slides, and I'm here to assist.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you for having us. Dr. Curry and I are excited to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to share the important work that we're doing and really really to talk about the imperatives that are in front of us as we move through this next time in community college leadership and what we need to be doing for our students. So thank you. So I'm going to kick us off. If you want to go to the next slide, we're going to tell you just a little bit about the colleges where we are so that you can get a feel for the work that we do when we're presidenting, as I like to say. So we are Mesa. San Diego Mesa College is one of 3 colleges, and we have a non-credit college as well. Miramar College, City College, Mesa College in beautiful San Diego. We are coterminous with San Diego County. So basically our community college serves the entire county. One of our most famous alumni is Annette Benning, She got her start in our little theater that was built in 1963. It still looks exactly the same way it did when Annette was with us. But we recently had her come to a Promise fundraising event for us. And the book that you see in her hand is the English book that she had from her course at Mesa. She still has most of her textbooks. And she talked a lot about how it was free when she was able to go to community college, and now understanding the Promise program and knowing that we were fundraising to help students afford community college was foreign to her when she first started working with us, and she's jumped in with both feet. But she talks about that basically Mesa College changed her life before she went on to San Francisco State, and then of course, her wonderful career. So we're happy to have her as an alumna. You can go on to the next slide. You can see a little bit about Mesa College, which is, we were founded in 1964 during what I like to call the gold rush of community colleges. There was basically a community college opening about once a week during those years in the 60s across the nation. So it's a time of great expansion as we move towards that. Annually, we have a little over 30,000 students a year, that give or take. And we are a minority majority serving institution. So in round figures, about 40% of our students are Latinx, Asian Pacific Islander, around 11%, African American, somewhere between 7 and 8%, Filipino, 5%. More and more of our students are mixed race, of more than one race, and so we think about that as well. We're a pretty traditional college in terms of the majority of our students are in that 18 to 24 category, although more and more we certainly have students that are coming back to us after wonderful careers, or as we're seeing now, different kinds of careers. Because we're in San Diego, we are a veteran, active military and veteran serving college, a little over 4,300 student veterans. And so, you can see the demographics there. Business psychology, communications, biology, and sociology are our top majors. And so we are the largest college in our district and in our region of San Diego and Imperial County. So just a little bit about Mesa, a proud Hispanic serving institution as well. All right, I think I'm turning things over to Dr. Curry now to talk a little bit about Compton.
So Compton College is the 114th California Community College. One of the great things that I like to talk about is Michelle Obama former First Lady Michelle Obama wearing Compton College sweatshirt on May 1st, 2019, which validates, from my perspective, the good work that we're doing at our institution, and it even make a statement in regards to Compton College has a great story to tell, and we do. We have a fascinating story from our history. We were originally founded in 1927. We're the first community college whose accreditation was revoked by the Credit Commission in 2006, became reaccredited, was again accredited in 2017. And now I think that we're a model as it relates to community college as it relates to educational justice and transformation. Next slide. Compton College, 114th California Community College. We service Compton, Linwood, Paramount, and Willowbrook areas of LA County and portions of other cities as well. We offer 38 certificate programs and 41 degree programs. When you look at our degrees and certificate programs, please note, prior to fall of 2019, we offered a number of degrees which students were not completing. So we focused our curriculum on the 41 and the 38, and we organized ourselves around the guided pathways model and the meta majors, which is a whole nother presentation, but we really focus on how we organize ourselves around these degrees. Our student population is 11,510. We have had a decline in enrollment due to COVID-19. We're looking at a decline in enrollment about 21 to 22% for this year. But right now for spring semester, we're covering at 25 to 27% decline in enrollment. Next slide. In 2018-19, we awarded 679 degrees and 213 certificates. You get a sense too of the most popular majors and also certificate programs. What's interesting about the most popular majors, these students say this is where they want to start out and fit with, but they normally don't finish with those degrees. And so we really focus in on when a student starts in with their major, a part of guided pathways, ensure that they actually complete their major at our institution. Next slide. Just give a sense about the budget. We have a $16.7 million budget. Our campus is 88 acres. We have 320 full-time and part-time faculty, and our district residents is 277,000. And so we encompass a large size district that's just not just the city of Compton. Next slide. So, Pam, you want to?
I'm happy to jump in. So before we start in, Keith and I are basically going to interview one another using some of the questions that we used during our equity chat. But I wanted to stop for a moment because people ask us, so Keith Curry and Pam Lester, an unlikely duo, what's the deal? Why is it that the two of you became the Equity Avengers? What synergy brought that together? I'm originally from Northern California, moved to Southern California. Keith Curry is a Compton young man and now, adult. I didn't say old Keith. So how did we get together? And I will tell you that the first time Keith and I met each other, I made Dr. Curry very angry. We were at a CEO conference and Compton was in the throes of dealing with trying to go through its reaccreditation process. And I was sponsoring a panel where we were talking to some folks from the Accreditation Commission, and we were running out of time. And I could see that Dr. Curry was frustrated and he wanted to ask a question, but we were running out of time. So I asked him if we could, I think I said something like, we've run out of time and, can we do it later? At that moment could see that he had a real high level of frustration because everybody else got to say their piece and Compton wasn't represented and Dr. Curry didn't get a chance to talk about his truth. And it hit me. And so I think I walked right up to Dr. Curry and I'd never met him before. And I said, I'm so sorry that just happened. And can we talk? And as they say, the rest is history. And I think it's a real lesson, not because of what I experienced or what Keith experienced in that moment, but it's really when you think about the core of how Keith and I do our work, which is not just how do we get more people in the room to have inclusive conversations, it's also about hearing the people who are in the room, who are trying to tell you that because of the access that they don't have, or because of not feeling included, that they feel excluded even when they're in the room with you. And so Keith and I found ourselves on the athletics commission together, fighting for students to be able to have meals. We had these old rules around students not being able to eat, which led us to our work together on affordability and food insecurity, led us to co-chairing this statewide task group about food and housing. And so what I would say is our origin story can be anybody's origin story. It really just takes people who are committed to every day putting one foot in front of the other and doing this work. So I just wanted to give that as some context because we started off on the wrong foot. And now we can barely get through a day without talking to each other. So Keith, I just wanted to start with that. So if you want to add to that.
I will. And I think it's important as educators that we're able to have honest conversations about, even there might be a disagreement, things might not go your way. You never know how that relationship can evolve from that situation. And I think for me, and I've totally forgot the story, right? And when you reminded me of the story a couple months ago, we were talking about this, I remember exactly what happened, but I could not remember how we became so close friends. I was like, when did this happen? And it happened gradually, but it happened gradually from the incident that occurred. And now we talk to each other every single day, but it's the understanding and being parallel, working with someone that has the same beliefs as you, and you don't have to explain equity, right? I don't have to go to, if I have an issue that I'm looking at on my campus, when I call Pam, I don't have to explain it to her. I go right to the details of this is what I'm dealing with. And she's able to understand that. And so for me, it's helpful to have a co-conspirator who I trust, but also who understands what I go through as a college president. And so I think that's been very helpful to me. And so when I look at the first question, Pam, is what is your definition of equity and how is equity-minded practices embedded in your work that you do?
Yeah, my definition of equity is pretty simple. It is really looking at any situation and looking to see who has access, who can be successful with that access, and have we built supports, inclusive practices that make sure that everybody who has access can get to success. I know at Mesa College, and there's lots of different, we all started with the 3 people of different sizes looking over the fence on the different, apple baskets. And we've adopted the graphic of people on adaptive bicycles, because really a bicycle can be all different sizes, and someone who is wheelchair bound can also be on a bicycle, but it looks different than the one that I might ride. So, to me, it's just, opportunity meets the very intentional analysis of what it helps to make students successful, and always asking yourself that question that I already talked about is who's missing from the room, and if you're in the room, whose voice is not being heard. The way it's embedded in my work is it's almost like it's so hard. It's like water. I don't even know how to answer the question anymore, almost, because I'll give you an example. When we had the first tranche of CARES funds come in, we started looking at criterion by which we would get emergency funds out to students. And so we ran some data based on financial aid information, and we said, okay, we're ready to go. And I said, no, we're not. Has institutional research looked at how this impacts our equity groups? And so we took a beat, had our institutional research people look at it, and we had created inequities in the way that we were looking at getting those emergency funds out. Even when something is important and imperative, you can still take a minute to make sure that you are not re-systematizing racism, re-systematizing inequitable practices. We've done that with scholarship practices. So for me, it's asking the questions of, have we looked at this from an equity perspective? And I focus in on racial equity. I believe that when you focus in on racial equity, all of the other historically minoritized groups do benefit from that, but I do pay attention to gender. I do pay attention to ability. I mean, we have to think of all those things, right? But it's just embedded in the way that I think about our work and everything that we do. But it's, so it's kind of part of my being, but I also create space. This is one that I've developed probably in the last 6 months, because no one is born culturally or racially equitably competent, right? No one wakes up in the morning, even if you are some of the greatest scholars in this practice, that doesn't happen. And so how do I create space as a leader so that others can find their way on that continuum? Because if you indict someone for their beliefs, you don't give them the opportunity to learn to do something better. So that's how it's embedded for me. Keith, how about you on your definition of equity and embedded in your work?
It's similar to you, but I always go back to, I'm always looking at fairness, right? And what I struggle with as a leader, I struggle with you mentioned the image of the boxes, right? And so I struggle with that image, and I've used it in presentations before regards to equity and showing that there's no gate, there's no fence, there's no boxes, everyone can see the game. Then there's another picture where everyone can see it from different parts of the stadium. And so now, over the last couple of months, I'm thinking, I can't create the perfect image of equity and what it looks like, because I always feel it's evolving. And I'm learning as a leader that my definition of equity and what I want to see happen is going to continue to evolve as I continue to learn and be a part of this equity work. And I'm always looking at fairness. I'm looking at access. I'm looking at our student success. And I'm really looking at how can we make sure that our policies and our procedures are equitable, where everyone has access, everyone is being successful, and it's fair across the board. And it's probably the hardest thing for me to do regards to the equity work, because I have to question everything, and I have to ask the questions to everyone. And sometimes it can feel a little bit intimidating when you have the college president continue to ask the same questions over and over again. And I'm not going to stop until I'm looking for that answer. I'm trying to pull the staff towards that answer. But we have to, as leaders, when we talk about how you embed it in your work, the way we embed it, especially as college president, is by asking a question. right? If we don't ask the question, who else will, right? So one of the big questions I ask is, show me this data and disaggregate it by all of our groups. What does it look like, right? If you don't have disaggregated data, I don't want to see it, because there could be some students who will not be served because of the policy that we're about to make. For case in point, I was in a meeting the other day, and we're talking about our intro to college course, our human development course. And I was like, you know what? This should be a class that everyone should take. And the staff was, and everybody's on board with it, right? And I'm on board. I'm excited, this, that, and the other. Then my dean said, hold on, Dr. Curry. Have you seen the first year students and that they're who take these courses? They're not doing well, and we just don't know why. So I don't know if we want to make this a part of the maps for graduation. However, I think we need to look at this data a little bit more before we make this decision that you just talked about. And my dean was right? Because you got to be critical, right? Even to the president to say, hold on, I know it's a great idea, Dr. Curry. However, this decision that you want us to make might not be an equity-minded decision, because we need to look at some data before we make the decision. So in order for us to be good at this equity-minded practice and this work, we have to ask questions. We have to be critical of everything. But then also, too, we have to have these relationships where you feel okay to be critical to your supervisor, to a board of trustees, or to a colleague. That's different, right? Sometimes people are afraid to be critical to others, but we have to be critical, because we're not critical if we do not ask the questions. Who is not served? It's going to be our student populations.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, and it actually does lead us into our second question around how we interrogate our own leadership around racial equity, because what you just talked about is doing that. And I too ask people to manage me. I say manage up, ask me hard questions, push back, because it's only through listening to understand and questioning one another in terms of how we do things that we break down the biases we can't see. Because I know that I have biases based on my own worldview and my own experience. I also know that I'm an impatient person when it comes to having students have to wait for us to get it together. And so I know sometimes what I'm asking of people is hard. And I know sometimes I'm doing things where folks have to question their own beliefs about how they operate in the world. And I don't do that because I'm so cool an equity leader, right? I do that because it is a benefit for our students to interrogate this system of higher ed that we basically run on our campuses. We know that community colleges, while they are the most democratic, systems of higher ed, are still structurally inequitable to the students who need us the most. We know that. These colleges were not created necessarily for the success of students who needed a lot of help. So, and when I say needed a lot of help, I'm not assigning that to any particular racial group or anything else, but in the master plan for higher education, that came up, that, the Clark-Kerr plan that came out of the late 1950s was not thinking necessarily about the success of historically minoritized students. And so we have to. And so when I think about interrogating my own leadership around racial equity, it is doing just that, Keith. It's asking people to ask hard questions of me and pushing me. So whether it's my ethnic studies faculty that are saying, we're going to need more resources to be able to meet the new CSU requirement, I have to think about that, right? I can go to the charts and say, oh, do we have enough FTEF and FTES? And I can have that sort of conversation. But what does it look like to actually have a group feel like it's supported in that work? So there are a number of opportunities to interrogate our own leadership. And then again, creating opportunities for your institution to learn how they impact racial equity. We recently had our kickoff for the spring semester, and we took on the call to action that came out last summer, and each of our pieces of our institution did different things around that. And we had in fact, Keith was on our panel with Dr. Regina Standback-Stroud, some students and faculty on our campus talking about racial equity, but really talking about anti-Blackness and racial inequality. And so in the spring, we didn't want to lose that thread. And so what we did is we created an opportunity through Storm Board for everyone to tell us what they're doing around anti-Blackness and racial equity. And now we're sharing that out through our institution, because you can't just have a forum and say, okay, now we're pro-Black, right? That doesn't work that way. You have to change your institution over a longer period of time. And so I go back every couple of days to see what people have posted in this Storm Board, because I am so inspired by faculty who have talked about their liquid syllabus, right? That they're really meeting students where they are. And it takes a heck of a lot of work to do a liquid syllabus. They're looking at, their grading policies. They're looking at the language that they use. They're looking at the authors that they use. They're looking at the textbooks. Our classified equity task force is doing amazing work. Our business services people brought in workshops for anti-racism. You don't think of student accounting people as necessarily being the ones who are embedded in this work, but we're all in this. But as leaders, you have to create the imperative. And so my own interrogation around racial equity is, am I doing enough? But I can't be the only one doing it, or I haven't built a foundation for the institution to continue to do that work. Because long after I'm gone someday, this needs to still be a focus of our institution. So you also have to, put some good cinder blocks, underneath you to make sure that you're doing that. So Keith, how about you?
So I just moved my notes in my office because you got me thinking about something else in regards to the call to action. And so, and the reason why I say that, I look at number 2 and 3. I'm gonna answer both at the same time because they're connected to the work that I do. I look at it from 3 different lenses. One, you have the pushy, right? As leaders, we have to be pushy. We got to push and push and push. If we do not push our organizations to think differently, to think critically about race and equity, then it's not going to happen. We as college presidents have to be the ones to push. So push, you got to be pushing. 2 is you have to have a clear understanding of your organizational structure. Some people say, what do you mean? Like, if you hear me speak, I'm always talking about Compton College 2024, our planning document, our educational master plan, our facilities plan, our staffing plan, enrollment management plan. I'm always talking about our planning documents. And the reason why I talk about that is because that is our structure of how we operate as an organization. And understanding that structure, so when things need to get done, you know who to assign those tasks to and let those individuals operate and do their job. And I'm very critical about organizations and organizational structure, because what I see a lot in higher education is you don't really understand how the structure works. So if people don't understand how the structure works and you try to do this type of critical work, it's difficult because you don't know how to get it to the end goal. For example, at my campus, getting to the end goal regarding organizational structure, we had the call to action from the California Community College Chancellor's Office. We did a response to the call to action. My director, Title IX, compliance and diversity, Title IX and compliance, wrote the plan with a faculty member. Included a change in our degree program to include a diversity requirement degree for our campus. It also includes workshops for professional development as relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It also included work for the campus regards to our campus police department. But they worked on this plan, and I made sure that it got to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees approved it. Now we have an action plan. But it started off with the structure. The plan is connected to what we're doing at Compton College 2024, and everyone bought into it through our collaborative governance process, where people were able to provide their input into it. So now it's a college document. It's not a document that Dr. Curry said he wanted. It's not a document that Tina Cooperman, who's our director of Title IX, diversity, Title IX, and compliance, not what she wanted. It's something that the college put together, and it went through our process because we understood the structure, right? And the last piece about this is the questioning. And Dr. Lester said is like, we have to provide the questioning as leaders. And especially when we talk about anti-racism work and bringing people together, you have to question your organization and how you do this. And at my campus, I had to learn something this summer, and it's called the ghost in the machine. And I'm in a presentation with a diversity, equity, inclusion person, and we're talking about diversity, and the presenter comes up with the ghost in the machine. And he uses our organizational chart and shows how we have these implicit biases. We have all these ghosts in our machine. Even though the organization is functioning, we have some ghosts in that machine, and the structure could crumble if we not deal with our own biases within our own organization that's limited us to move the organization forward. So you have to be able to question, and when someone comes to you and say, this is right, you got to be saying, okay, what's the ghost machine? Help me understand this. Once I understood it, I was like, you know what? You're right. And say, okay, how do we break down these ghosts? But then how do we tell other organizations and other people that we work with about ghosts in the machines?
Yeah, that was a moment for me too when I saw that slide on Ghosts in the Machine. Of course, I went to a music reference in my head, but just in terms of the work around anti-racism, because we are structurally inequitable, of course there are ghosts in the machine, and they continue to replicate themselves over time because we continue to do the same thing with our students. We think of, and I think, and we'll get to the COVID questions in a minute. I mean, honestly, I don't think any of us thinks that our institutions are going to look the same as they did before we made our way off campus. So I think that's important. Keith, I really love that you brought up systems, because if we're going to change systems, we have to have new systems. And I think that's something that we did very successfully as well in terms of embedding equity into all of our program review, all of our hiring practices. It just has to be everywhere. It just has to be everywhere.
But I will take it to the next step, and I've been working on this because I'm as a CEO of the district, is our board policies, right? And knowing that you have a cycle to review your board policies, and there's been a lot of conversation about equity work within the board policies, and we have a 3-year cycle for board policies, and we follow that 3-year cycle. However, there's some policies reviewed a year ago, and someone asked me, are we going to review this again? I was like, yep. There's an equity lens. We got to look at it from equity lens. We're going to review it in less than a year. And you know what? That's the right thing to do. Yeah. But we have to make sure the board policies are aligned, and that all your planning documents are aligned around this work. So that no one's questioning the focus of the organization. Your organization is about this work.
Absolutely. We can go to the next slide too, Stephanie. So the role that higher ed will play in the post-COVID economic recovery, how can higher ed improve to serve the most vulnerable student population? Someone that I always watch is Dr. Darian Pollard at Montgomery College in Maryland. She is a trailblazer in every sense of the word. So I always look to see what they're doing, and of course others as well. I think the role that higher ed plays, and I'm going to talk specifically about community colleges here, is we get people back to work. We get people who potentially have been in industries that will never be the same, where labor markets have basically become smaller and will stay smaller for a long time, and put them into jobs where the economy has changed. I think we all know the value of our health and allied health professionals at this point. Community colleges are the #1 trainers of nurses, allied health technicians, physical therapy assistants, respiratory therapists, you name it, we train those folks. How important will it be to continue to do that work and to expand it completely? But where will other jobs be? And I'm taking this from a jobs perspective for the moment. And who's lost the most jobs? Our most vulnerable students are also the most vulnerable in the job market. And so what we have to do is get those vulnerable individuals in our communities into our community colleges. I think working with our non-credit and credit partners to get them onto the ramp for the kinds of work we're doing, but we have to develop paid internships and work-based learning opportunities very early on so they can get back to work right now. And I don't mean unpaid. I mean that they would get into good paying kinds of jobs. I was excited to see the federal government adopt the apprenticeship standards yesterday. I think that's going to be, wonderful as well. But when I think about, what's going to get our cities and counties and our most vulnerable back on their feet, it's getting into careers that are sustainable over time, that support their families. It's getting kids back into school. It's all those things. So what role will we play? Our job, #1 right now, is to at least grab the students back in that were with us that we've lost. We started a phone campaign immediately in the spring semester as we started to lose students to find out how we could get them back in. And basically at this point, and now with this protracted period of time without, a whole lot of financial assistance, and I won't, get on my soapbox about that, send the damn checks. But anyway, at this point, we need to get people both working, but also back into our educational systems so that they can continue to do the kind of learning that they need to do. I also think we can be really wonderful models for how organizations recover from COVID, and whether that's looking at our staffing or our budgets or how we do business. We're very nimble organizations. Yes, systemically we have some challenges, but we're far more nimble than our friends at CSU or UC or even private institutions. So from a higher ed perspective, let's use that. Let's be the democratic arm of higher ed. Let's use our nimbleness. And then you have to apply the equity lens over that, right? Do we need more majors in a particular field because, it might be the popular thing to do with folks, or do we need to put more resources into some of our career technical fields for a shorter period of time to make sure people can get jobs and then put them in that, pathway to learning? So I think it's all about, the economic recovery is about all of us doing this together, working with our counties, working with our cities, getting people housed, getting people food. We know how to do it all. We're not paid to do it all, but we do know how to leverage our resources. So that's kind of where my thinking is. How about you, Keith?
I think higher ed has the opportunity to do something that's never been done before right now, and thinking differently post-COVID. I talked to a lot of colleagues about just hypothetical about conferences, right? I think the Zoom platform has allowed us to be more connected with others across the country in a matter of minutes. And we've been forced to do that through Zoom and through COVID, but Zoom has been very helpful where we're able to be on this panel today and have a conversation where it didn't take us to get on the flight. It takes 1 hour, but 39 people are able to engage in a conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think this is going to give us an opportunity as it relates to professional development and providing more professional development within our organizations throughout the year because of this Zoom platform, and be able to utilize that. I also think the online learning is going to improve because of COVID. I think more college presidents are going to have more of a critical eye at what's happening in online education and really focus on the online education and how they offer degrees and certificates online. I think it's going to force us to think differently about this. Another thing that's going to force us to think differently about is the technology we have for our employees. So I have classified staff who works in maintenance and operations. You say, Dr. Curry, why are you talking about maintenance and operations staff? My staff within maintenance and operations, they did not have laptop computers. So when we went remote, how are they able to know what's going on campus? How are they able to read my message? They didn't have a laptop, right? We made sure they have laptops, right? So they're able to engage in conversations with our campus community and what's happening on our campus. But not all of our employees had laptops either. So we had to make sure everyone had laptops. So now moving forward, everyone should have docking stations. That means you can work remote or you can work from home. It's going to change us to think differently. It's going to change us to think differently how we offer classes, right? Not only are they online, but also they're going to be more hybrids, right? How many students will be in the class? So I think now with COVID, it's going to make us think differently, which I think is a good thing. I don't think COVID-19 is a bad thing, right? But some of these the impacts of this, how we change things, will be better. One thing I threw in the chat was some of our data from last spring regards to the services we provide to students, from hotspots to housing to food program, food resources we provided. It gives you some of the success and retention, and also the CARES Act grant of how well our students did. But if you look at that data, and you can see that we have done a lot to support our students as relates to housing, food, and security last spring. Now I think we need to do more, right? I think we need to double down our efforts regards to housing and food insecurity. We can no longer ignore our students' housing and food insecurity. Well, yeah, I'm a college president, but you know what? I'm a president of a college, but also I'm a vice president of social services. right? And the reason why I'm a vice president of social services, because I don't know all the rules within social services, but as a vice president, I know how to implement. Once I understand the rules and the activities, I'm going to implement those services on our campus. But I'm trying to work with those presidents and those directors of these social services programs to provide those services on my campus, right? And that's important because our students need that to be successful. If a student cannot pass a transfer level math course, right, because they don't have food or housing, that's on us as well. And we can no longer ignore that that's not a part of our job description. It is. Student success is a part of our job description, which also includes student basic needs. So how do we improve higher education? Is about thinking differently, taking COVID-19 lessons learned and implementing those lessons as we move forward. You want to go to the next question, Pam?
Yeah, discoveries we're making about our own capacity for equity, diversity, and inclusion. The discoveries, so I'll talk about our institution first, and then I'll talk about our own. People often ask me what I'm most excited about, looking forward, where will we go? And I don't even know how to answer that question because I'm in a community that has endless capacity. And I'm not saying people aren't tired, weary, need help, need support, because we do, but the indefatigable efforts of our institution just blow me away every day. So our own capacity for equity, diversity, and inclusion expands all the time. And again, it's that nimbleness, it's that culture of care. It's what Russell Lowry Hart at Amarillo College calls, just love, right? We love our students, we love each other, we love our community. And so the discoveries that I'm making about equity, diversity, and inclusion, for me personally, are really around that we are loving and caring and have grace with one another. And so my own capacity expands when I'm willing to make myself vulnerable to not knowing what an answer might be to solving an equity, diversity, and inclusion challenge on my campus. And that as a leader, I'm willing to say that and to say, but I'm certainly willing to hear from folks, or let's go find some folks that can help us. And so my own capacity has been tremendously expanded by the work that we've done with Estella Bensamin and Sean Harper at USC, used to be Center for Urban Education, now Race and Equity. The work that we've done with the Community College Equity Assessment Lab with Dr. Luke Wood and Frank Harris, the work that we've done with Sarah Goldrick-Rabb at the Hope Center, and then just mentors throughout the state that have really helped us to understand how we can do this work better. So I think as a leader, you have to be open to discovering that you don't know everything, and you have to be in a learning mode. One of the things that we ask on our equity chat is, what are folks reading right now? And what would they recommend for us to read? And so now, of course, my reading list is infinitely longer based on all of the wonderful things that they suggested. But what I caution people against is thinking because it's sitting on your bookcase or on your Kindle playlist that you're now woke and you know what you're doing, right? You have to actually read the books. You have to actually talk to other people about your discoveries, and you have to actually say, I used to be really bad at this, right? Like when I didn't know better, I didn't do better. And so I think it's really important to be able to say, even right now, I am not the queen of equity, diversity, and inclusion, but I am the queen of finding out about how I can do it better every day. So I think it's important to do that.
So I would answer 5 and 6 a little bit together. Is that I've been a CEO since 2011. This is my 10th year doing this job, and I don't know everything, right? I don't. And I'm trying to continue to learn from my colleagues and also my friends. And one of the things that I've noticed the last year working with Pam, we have a lot of friends within our system they're not just our friends, but they're also like our mentors. And they are critical of the work that we do, and they provide us with advice. And we have scholars who we talk to on a regular, who we're connected with in this type of research. And that's a whole nother type of conversation as well. So the discoveries I'm making about my own capacity is that I don't know enough, and I continue to learn about equity, diversity, and inclusion, and being and able to recognize that I feel like I'm doing as much as possible, but every day is a learning experience for me as a college president. And I'm okay with telling people that. And I'm comfortable in my skin to say, hey, I really love talking about equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I talk about this a lot, but there's still a lot more that I have to learn. And I think for me, as being an effective and culturally competent leader, the thing for me to need is to be able to recognize my faults of where I'm not at regards to my leadership in this area, but also to continue to want to learn and to strive to learn to be better as a college president, to help move my organization forward regards to our equity, diversity, and inclusion work. And I've been in presentation with Pam and listening to her and about their professional development. I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. A year and a half later, we went out and got a grant to help support some of our professional development and improving the professional development work on our campus as relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we have $75,000 for that, right? But I was able to recognize it, that that's a problem. I also have been able to recognize when I talk about my LGBTQ plus community and how they've been disenfranchised on my campus and have been ignored and the services have not been provided. And I've been very intentional working with the campus community to follow up on their needs. I've been very intentional to follow up on the needs as relates to my Dreamer students and try to figure out what can we do to help our Dreamer students at Compton College to be successful. So we have created President CEO Task Force in those three areas to support these different groups. So what I've learned in my over the years is not, if I don't know, create a task force and have the task force provide you with recommendations of what the college should be doing. It's not my job to tell the college how to do everything. My job is to put the right people in the right positions in order for them to provide recommendations to help guide the decision-making to improve our organization for all of our students. That is fair, that is about access, and is about student success.
And I think, Stephanie, just to wind up in question 6 there, I think to be an effective, culturally competent leader right now, you have to put your privilege on the line. Our brother Ed Bush up at Cosumnes River College talks about this a lot. He talks about it as you have to be willing to lose your job to do the right thing. And while I would love to keep my job, I think that's right. And so whether it's my white privilege, whether it's my privilege of socioeconomic status, what is my privilege as a college president, I have to be able to put that on the line in terms of being a culturally competent leader, because if I don't, then I've risked nothing. And no one will see you as a leader who actually, even if the good things are happening, if there's no skin in the game for you and it's all just, people thinking how wonderful you are, then you're not doing the right work. Your knuckles have to be a little scuffed up and your knees have to be a little battered, because there are some very difficult conversations that you have to have on your campuses, whether it's hiring or how students are doing, where people are affronted and they're not happy. And it's not that you don't have the conversations, but you have to put your privilege on the line and be willing to have those conversations. So I think you gotta throw your privilege out there. And so I know we want to have some time for questions. And so happy to turn it over to you, Stephanie, to ask us.
So we do want to go ahead and let everyone know that if you have questions, please feel free to go ahead and type those into the Q&A or into the chat feature. And we'll be happy to get to those. I do want to just take one quick second to say that it's truly an honor for us to be able to help provide the platform for this conversation today. And I find your story extremely fascinating. It's wonderful to hear how the two of you have worked together and have developed your partnership. I think one of the things that I really see from this conversation is how important it is for this conversation to start on the executive administrative level, and how that filters down through all areas of the college and through the day, not only the day-to-day processes as you've talked about, but just through the overall culture in general. So I'm just curious if you guys would share just really quickly kind of what maybe you see as the next step for Equity Avengers.
We don't know, right? We're trying to figure that out, and we're building an organization now, and we'll be hiring a project manager to help manage the Equity Avengers and the work that we're doing. But right now, we're in a position where we're going to be trying to figure out over the next couple of years and developing a 5-year strategic plan for the Equity Avengers and how to move this thing forward. But we don't really know what it's going to look like. But what's scary about not knowing is the unlimited potential that's out there in regards to the Equity Avengers and how we could do more for not only higher community colleges in California, but higher ed in general in the United States. And so it's a good time to be a part of these conversations. And it's going to be a lot of listening for us the next 6 months to try to figure out what is this, Pam says, what is this thing, right? So now we're trying to figure out what it is. We don't really know, right? And I was at one point trying to force this is what it is until I had a conversation with someone who's like, this is why you got to take some time to figure it out. You can't force this. This is something that continues to evolve. So it evolved from a conversation at a conference regards to me speaking about Compton College, then to working on other initiatives. Now we have an equity chat. Now we're going to be hiring a project manager. So we have things in the pipeline that we're doing, and we have different partnerships, but it's just the beginning, and I'm excited about it. But I'm also scared because you just don't know. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, and Keith and I have just a couple of other things going on, right? So we do this, CEO board, there's plenty of work for Doctors Curry and Lester. Excuse me. One of the things that I think about is how many times I'm at a conference and someone walks up to me and says, I wish my president were more involved in the work like you are at your institution. What would be your suggestion if I'm a middle manager or a faculty member, whatever? And so my goal is to not have that question asked so often in the future. It's that presidents would see themselves as roll up their sleeves, diversity, equity, and inclusion warriors. I think people want to be. I think communities are very different. There's an acceptance of DEI in California and maybe some other places that looks a little bit different than it does in places where you don't have interest conversions about looking at racial equity. That doesn't mean you don't do the work. It just means that it might be more difficult. So I think we're really trying to create a broader community and provide leaders at all parts of the institution with the tools to do the work. So I think that's what's coming next, and what it will look like, who knows?
It's very exciting. I'm glad to hear, and we can't wait to see how it evolves. We do have a question. Please clarify a term used earlier. Did you say ghost machine?
I said it's called the ghost in the machine.
Ghost in the machine.
I'm gonna drop in the chat in a couple seconds what this means. But it looks at your. Can I share my screen?
I believe you can. Hold on one second. Let me give you access to do that. I think you can share now.
Can everybody see that chart?
Yeah.
Yes.
So what this means is looks at our organization, and the presenter he provided this to me, and I use it in the presentation. But it talks about how you have implicit bias, microaggressions, diversity norms, privilege, power, diversity myths. And so how do you, as a leader, recognize that these are some of the issues within your organization and provide training for people to recognize this, but also how you improve your organization because of these ghosts in the machine? So when you look at your organization and how you operate, you don't see these ghosts there, right? You're so focused on who's the president, what services you're providing. But then these ghosts here are limiting your organization from moving forward. And so I have recognized I have these ghosts in my machine, which is my college. And how do I fix this? And we're really looking at this through professional development.
And I also threw into the chat the link to the work that we did during convocation for the call to action, and just our entire professional learning website from convocation is available to the public. So it's actually right on the homepage of Mesa College, so you can click on it on your own too.
Wonderful. Do we have any other questions coming in from participants? Again, you feel free to type those in the chat or the Q&A.
And I'm going through the whole presentation I just did, so I'm gonna attach that in.
Okay.
If I can.
As people are thinking about questions, if you're on Twitter, you can join us on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And we do equity chat. The great thing about doing an equity chat on Twitter is you can do anything you want because you're not on screen. So you can just sit and you can read what people are doing. We had a great session with David Helene, who is the CEO of EdEquity, looking at how to get emergency funds out to students. So if you're interested, you can just put in #EquityChat and you can see all our other things, or join us, as I say, live on Wednesdays at 5. It's a lot of fun.
I saw the question that came in regards to hiring process. And one of the things that we're doing right now is we're looking, and I'm behind by 6 months on this one, but we already have a draft, but we're revising our hiring procedure on our campus. And my board of trustees have been very engaged in this. This is like DEI work. They love it. And so they had an open conversation at our large board meeting about hiring procedures and different recommendations and different thoughts that they had. But we're really focused in on improving hiring procedure. And the one area that I really want to focus in on is the part-time faculty, right? Because what I want to see is how can we get more individuals of color into part-time teaching positions to be able to get experience? Because it's hard for them, those individuals to get through the first round because they have not had teaching experience. So how do you provide that? But also too, we're creating with Sean Harper and the Race and Equity Center at USC, we're creating a faculty academy that's going to start this summer for individuals who are former Compton College students who are interested in being faculty members and who are in a master's or a PhD program. And so we're going to start looking at growing your own of individuals to be able to get in your pools, so you can be able to have a diverse part-time faculty, but also full-time faculty pools. And then also looking at your procedures. You have to look at your procedures to figure out, okay, what's going on here where we're not getting a diverse pool. But also looking at how to recruit individuals for your jobs. A lot of times people say, oh, I recruit, I just post it on the website. That's not enough, right? Also, too, we did work with the Center for Urban Education with Estella Bensimon, and Pam done more work with her than I have. But looking at how, like your flyer, right? Your announcement, how do you announce your position, right? Start to ask critical questions about what platform to recruit, how to announce the position. Why is it that my finalists are not a diverse pool, right? As college presidents, we need to be the ones asking the question, okay, why is it not diverse? But then also knowing if it's not a diverse pool, and think about this. Dr. Luster taught me this. She said, Keith, if it's not a diverse pool, kick it back. You don't have to interview. Think about it. I was still interview when it wasn't diverse. I was like, okay, I got to do the interviews. Perhaps kick it back. That will send a message within the organization that you're looking for a diverse pool.
Yeah, Stephanie, if I could just add to that really quickly, there's two really key features that have helped us. One is looking at the idea of experience. Often we'll say 5 years experience, blah, blah, blah. And I question that. Is it 5 years teaching one prep at one college for 5 years? What about an adjunct that's been teaching for 2 years that's applied to your pool that's taught at 3 different institutions and 5 different courses? So I think the experience is definitely an artificial barrier. And then also providing to search teams, they should already have it, but looking at the diversity of their students. Look at who the faculty are, look at who your students are, and then look to see who you're looking for.
Right. I think I saw one tweet that just came in. It's a quote, actually: continue to learn. When I didn't know better, I didn't do better. And that's a quote from our discussion today. And, you know, this is one of those conversations that's really hard to stop the webinar because there's always such great dialogue. So I want you all to remember that you can use the hashtag, as Dr. Lester and Dr. Curry have both mentioned. Join their equity chats on Wednesday. I personally have learned more from listening through Twitter to some of the conversations that they have and some of the people who engage with them there. It's very informative, and it's just really great conversation. It's a great place to start the platform for us to have these conversations. I know we all have room for growth, and I think we all can continue to learn, and we can all continue to educate ourselves. So please join us there on Twitter. Feel free to send messages to 25th Hour through our website. We can get those to Dr. Curry and Dr. Lester for you. That's 25com.com. We recorded today's session. We will also be posting that on our website. If anyone needs to go back and look at that or reference it later, we'll be happy to share that information with you there. We will also share the PDF of the conversations that we had and the questions. One interesting idea might be to take those conversations and those questions back to your teams at your institutions and maybe ask some of those questions internally, because I think they're very thought-provoking and a great platform for starting these conversations. So again, it's truly been an honor to have the Equity Avengers with us today. Dr. Curry, Dr. Lester, I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon and just continue to do the work. It's wonderful to see, and we just thank you for allowing us to be a part of it. And thank you to the 25th Hour team for helping us to promote and to have the webinar today. So I hope everyone.
We have t-shirts, and also we have masks. We haven't been selling, like we've been so busy. That's another piece of it. Do we have that? We'll send you the link. You can send it out to people that want to buy.
Yes, yes, do that. Yes, we'll be happy to do that. Side hustle,
but we haven't.
Really. I know we blew it. We didn't even wear our own merch this morning, Keith. What the heck?
I just thought right
now. Perfect. Yes, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate the time.
Thank you. I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.